Okay, so hi. This is slightly unusual surroundings for me to be posting a video on this YouTube channel in, but there's a good reason for it, I promise. I filmed my Opiate reaction, my reaction to Tool's Opiate, the first EP, a little while back, edited together, got it all set. It was like an hour long. And then I upload it to YouTube, and it gets copyright blocked. Fuck you, YouTube. And to be honest, I couldn't be like, well, first of all, I couldn't work out how to avoid the copyright strike bots or whatever, and second of all, I couldn't really be bothered to go into the research on that. So I thought it'd just be easier. I thought, why don't I just give it like a quick review now, like a rundown of what I thought? Because yes, I did listen to it. Yes, I did have opinions on it. It's a shame you can't see my live opinions because of stupid copyright stuff. But I think a lot of people were requesting this video, so I might as well give my rundown on it now. So this is essentially my reaction 4-ish days on to Tool's Opiate. So my overall opinion of the EP is that it's good. It's very raw, like really, really raw. Like at Tool, obviously not at a major label studio, obviously not in a big record contract, obviously like super inexperienced with the recording industry and how to make the best use of a studio. And that comes across really strongly, I think, in the production and the sound of the record. So I think that's its weakest point for me. I thought the production sounded just tinny and like harsh, and the trebles were too high, the bass was too low. It was obviously all, again, the byproduct of Tool like being in some probably shitty studio in LA outside of this huge major label record contract and probably having to pay for a lot of things themselves. So that can be forgiven, I think, but I think the production, especially on the, like, I noticed it the most on like The Sweat and some of the earlier tracks. I think that hampered it the most, in my opinion. You know, pretty much every Tool album, maybe except 10,000 Days, has pretty sublime production, in my opinion. But this EP is pretty much the sole exception in that I think the production actually has a tangible impact on the way I enjoy the EP. So that's just something to point out. Again, I don't hold it against them. And my first reaction when I listened to it, which you would see if I could put up the video, but I can't, was like recoiling a bit because I had it up too loud and I didn't realize that it was going to sound any different from, like, say, an Undertow. But it did, and that's one of the first things I noticed. Again, I don't hold it against them too much, though. I thought it was interesting to see the whole band were pretty much, like, at the height of their instrumental technical powers already. So it's interesting how, like, for example, Danny, it had just the same amount of, like, incredible fast rolls and supreme chops, excellent double kick drum work, which he made a lot of use of on that record. I almost thought there was like a chance that he bought it not long before he went recording, and so he was determined to use it on pretty much every song. But just, yeah, his incredible work, just as good as it would be like 10 years on, 20 years on, even today. So, I mean, that man is just a freak of nature, and it extends to the other instrumentalists too. I mean, Adam Jones has some really cool guitar riffs on this, which are a bit more subdued in the mix early on, but in some of the later tracks, like Cold and Ugly, even Opiate, the last track, he sort of comes to the forefront a bit more, does some cool solo-ish stuff, some cool chunky riffs in there as well. Quite similar to his style of Undertow playing. He'd become a bit less sort of linear in style as his career went on, in my opinion. But I thought he was fantastic. He really brought his A game. The bassist, great. I mean, I don't know too much about Paul, the first bassist, but yeah, he did his job. He had some excellent bass lines throughout it, which I'll talk about a bit later. And then, of course, Maynard. And I mean, Maynard, he's an interesting vocalist, very similar to Danny as a drummer, in that his style might have changed over the course of his career, but I think his vocal abilities never did. So even early on, like here, he was just an incredible vocalist with insane range, great style, great way of enunciating different words. Incredible roars, we got a couple roars on that, and just some soaring high notes. Again, these are all of his greatest strengths, and they're in full display on this record. So in terms of like the instrumental character of this record, the Opiate EP, I think Tool were already at the height of their powers that early on in their career, and I think that's super impressive. Now, I said that the EP was good, and the reason I said it was good and not like a masterpiece, probably on the level of an Undertow or something, was because I think the songwriting was not always strong. And the reason for that, apart from obviously the production issues, I thought the songwriting was not always strong. And the reason for that is there were some fantastic tracks, but there were a lot of tracks that were a little bit more middling. So my favourite track on the EP by far, I think, well, maybe not by far, but by a decent margin, was Hush. I almost thought, it almost reminded me of like an early Rage Against the Machine song, or even, and this is sacrilege probably saying this, but like a Red Hot Chili Peppers song. Because that was basically proto-funk metal. There was like hints of Primus in there, hints of, all of the best examples of later new metal. I thought the bass line that underpinned the whole thing was just brilliant. It had this real funky sort of swagger to it, this great movement. I thought Maynard's vocals were fantastic. I thought the little verse-chorus dynamic they had going on was super catchy. I loved that ending part with just those stabs with Danny just pounding the double kick drums. Fantastic song. And it was only like 2 minutes 47, I think, which, like, honestly, props to Tool for showing that incredible restraint early on. You'd never see them do a 2-minute track later on in their career, especially not a fully formed like start to finish through composed songs. So I thought that was just so catchy, so effortless. That blew me away on first listen. And I had plenty more raving, happy things to say about it in the initial reaction, but this is just a sample of that. So fantastic song. I loved it so much. Also a great song, and this sort of ties into something else that I wanted to talk about, was the first live track, Cold and Ugly. I thought the live tracks actually, honestly, that stretch was probably the best part of this EP, and it's for several reasons. First of all, I think the live sort of really full, dense, full-bodied production really worked to their favour, and really worked to this EP's favour in general. I love how much that production sort of contrasted with the rest of the studio stuff, which honestly sounded a bit cold and clinical and tinny, like I said. Again, it had this full-bodied punch and roar to it that I just thought was fantastic, and really broke up the, tones and sounds of the EP right around the middle. So those two live tracks were fantastic in a production sense, but they were also fantastic in a performance sense. And that's why I sort of wondered if maybe like they tried to record these songs in the studio, but what ended up happening was that they heard these live recordings. It was like, no, we captured the energy of it we needed in that live performance. So why try and, do the same thing but worse on the studio album? So they probably decided to put it in for that reason. Ultimately, I sort of hypothesized that it might have just been because they ran out of money. Something as simple as that. I don't know. The best thing about Tour is you can't tell what's an artistic decision and what's like laziness or lack of resources from the band. So no, I thought that was really cool. I thought they were great inclusions, and they were both pretty great tracks, but Cold and Ugly was just brilliant, absolutely top notch. It was like one of their heaviest songs, one of their heaviest, most pummeling songs. Incredible guitar riffing from Adam, some fantastic, like, ultra fast drum work from Danny. I thought the lyrics were great too. I mean, Maynard was at sort of his biting best on that song, and on Jerk Off too. I thought his sense of humour on Jerk Off was great. So yeah, both of those tracks, but mostly Cold and Ugly, excuse me, were fantastic. Loved both of them. Have been returning to both of them a lot. But the problem was, I mean, those three tracks in particular were the clear standouts of the EP, in my opinion. And from there, it got a little bit worse, in my opinion, the other three, to different extents. So, for example, the first track, Sweat, I thought it was good. I thought it was a little bit inoffensive, so it wasn't a particularly catchy track or anything. And I think that was also the track where the production, for some reason, hindered it the most, because a lot of Danny's drum work on Sweat is very, like, hi-hat heavy, emphasizing the less low-end, throaty parts of the drum kit. So I thought that sort of did hinder the track a bit, but I thought it was a perfectly catchy track, and I didn't have any major problem with it. It's not a track I've really listened to a whole lot, but I think, for a way of starting off an EP, you can do a lot worse. Opiate too, the title track. I thought the main thing that stuck out to me on that track were the lyrics, and I mean they were a bit like, I guess you could say trite, but I thought, the way Maynard approached sort of tackling like organized religion and the idea of a god and stuff. Considering he was young, I thought he did it comparatively well, as best as he could with 20 odd years of wisdom under his belt. I liked some of the lyrics in particular. I liked the choices were always a problem for you lyric. Always were a problem for you, I think is the way he phrases it. I thought that was really clever, and like the what you need is someone strong to guide you sort of thing. I thought that was a cool sort of a very tongue-in-cheek way of approaching the subject. Music-wise, it was a bit slow, it was a bit more driving. I didn't mind it. I thought it was fine. And essentially the track was only 5 minutes, but then they went on the whole disgustipated thing, which they were wont to do early on, and put some silence, and then put this very strange psychedelic track at the end describing like drug use in graphic detail, and I thought that was a bit, I mean, it was a gimmick, and it was a knowing gimmick, so I don't think they were trying to be serious at all, and it's probably ill-advised, I think, to attack that sort of song from a more objective standpoint, because I don't think that's what they were going for. Like, no one listens to that track in isolation, I don't think. But, I mean, they could have cut it. Like, they could have cut that. And I think that's the same with a lot of, Tool's interlude stuff, particularly on Anima. Like, I think they could have cut a lot of it and the album wouldn't have been worse off. But, I mean, they've done so many worse joke tracks and interludes throughout their career, so I was honestly fine with it at the end of the day. The worst track, in my opinion, was probably Part of Me. That actually has ended up being one of my least favourite Tool tracks, and it's for reasons that I can't quite put my finger on. I thought it was sharing a lot of elements, I think, of later Tool in many ways, because, I mean, that was the first time I think we've seen a ton of really crazy time signature work from the band, so, they melded and fused and morphed several different meters and feels together, especially in the drum work, which was meant to constantly like disorient me, and that's the effect it had. But I thought it wasn't like particularly catchy. I thought it was just kind of like dirge-like and sort of a slog to listen to, in my opinion. I really wasn't a fan. I also wasn't a fan of the lyrics. I thought that was some of Maynard's worst lyrics, because that whole, I'm a part of you, you're a part of me, I know you better than I know myself thing is just, unless there's some meaning that I'm missing in that, like some sort of ironic meaning I'm missing in that, I thought that's been done better by so many bands. Like Swans alone, for example, have done that exact theme multiple times, a million times better throughout their career. So I thought that was a bit poorly rendered, a little bit cringeworthy. It was the only time I've really cringed at Maynard's lyrics to any extent. So yeah, normally he's fine, but I thought that was just kind of trite and forced and tongue-in-cheek. So I wasn't a fan of the lyrics, wasn't a fan of the music. It wasn't like, of course it wasn't terrible. Like, I don't think any Tool song is terrible, but it is probably my least favourite Tool song. Which, I mean, indicates that, their worst song is still better than a lot of other bands' worst songs, but yeah, no, I wasn't a big fan of Part of Me, but it's their first EP, like I can obviously cut them some slack, and they were still working through their style and their songwriting abilities. They were still yet to come into that sort of technical, like progressive, almost sci-fi influenced style of writing, both lyrics and music. So this is the early days, they're cutting their teeth on different styles of music. They're trying like a math rock sort of maybe even post-hardcore thing on this track, and I don't think it worked personally, but who am I to judge? I was also surprised to learn that like a lot of these tracks get played live, like a lot, even more so than Undertow, which is surprising. Like I heard that Sweat's been played live recently. Part of Me gets played a lot, don't know why. And what's the other one? What else gets played? Oh, one of the other tracks gets played. Hold on. Maybe like Cold and Ugly or something. I don't know. One of the other tracks gets played live. So I think there's 3 tracks on this EP that do get played live with some semblance of regularity. I thought that was really interesting. I don't know, maybe they have fond memories of this EP, even though, you know, Justin, their current bassist, wasn't on this EP at all. Yeah, it's possible they have fond memories of it that, you know, make them want to play it live amongst a lot of the other more complex material that they do live a lot more. Interestingly, Hush has never been played since like the 90s, which is just like offensive because that's my favourite track on the whole thing. They don't recognise greatness when they see it, SMH. And yeah, I think that about covers the extent of my opinions on Opiate. Again, I'm so sorry that I couldn't get the actual reaction out to you. Maybe in the future I'll find out a way to do that. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about what I thought, or any opinions on my opinions, or anything else you just want to tell me about the Opiate EP in general. But the point is, I think I'm pretty much done with Tool from this point. Some people have said they want me to check out Salival, the live album. It's not on streaming services, so I'd have to obtain it from, you know, slightly less legal parts of the internet. But if you guys really want that, I can do it. I'll just get it. And, you know, I'd be more than happy, because apparently people say that there's some really sick live versions on that album. So let me know if that's something you'd be interested in, or if there are any other albums you want me to react to. I've got a couple videos in the works right now, and including a long-promised Worst to Best by one of my favourite bands, which you'll see soon. So, other than that, I hope you enjoyed watching this. Again, sorry that you couldn't see my raw reactions of this, but hopefully you get a more considered take on it now with some days in advance. So, thank you so much for watching. Sorry about all this, and I will see you in the next video, which hopefully won't be copyright claimed. Alright, goodbye.